The rain fell mercilessly over Westwood that October evening, turning the normally bustling streets into slick, deserted pathways. 23-year-old Emma Hayes huddled beneath the torn awning of a closed bakery, clutching her worn backpack against her chest. 3 months of homelessness had taught her which spots offered the best shelter, but tonight's unexpected downpour had caught her unprepared. Emma's stomach growled, a painful reminder that she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. The $5 in her pocket, her entire fortune, felt like both a treasure and a mockery. She'd been saving it for something truly essential, though she wasn't sure what could be more essential than food at this point. Life hadn't always been this desperate. Just 6 months ago, she'd had a modest apartment, a waitressing job at a local diner, and a family she thought loved her. Then came her stepfather's gambling debts, her mother's ultimatum that Emma should contribute her life savings to pay them off, and the devastating discovery that her own family valued money over her well-being. When she refused to hand over the $3,200 she'd painstakingly saved for community college, they'd kicked her out, changing the locks while she was at work. "You've always been selfish," her mother had texted her. "Don't come back until you're ready to help this family." The rain intensified, pounding against the pavement like tiny bullets. Emma wiped her damp cheeks, unsure whether she was brushing away raindrops or tears. She was about to move deeper under the awning when something caught her eye across the street. A dark shape slumped awkwardly on a bench. At first she thought it was just another homeless person, but something about the stillness of the figure sent alarm bells ringing. Emma hesitated. Getting involved meant risking her own safety, and she'd learned the hard way that kindness wasn't always rewarded. But something pulled her forward, a force stronger than her caution. "Hello?" she called, approaching carefully. "Are you okay?" The man on the bench didn't respond. He wore an expensive-looking suit, now drenched and clinging to his frame. His face was alarmingly pale, and a thin line of blood trickled from his temple. "Sir, can you hear me?" Emma gently shook his shoulder, panic rising in her throat when he remained unresponsive. His breathing was shallow but present, and his skin felt cold and clammy beneath her fingers. She reached for her phone before remembering she no longer had one, another casualty of her current circumstances. Looking around desperately, she realized the street was empty. No passers-by to call for help, no open businesses with phones she could use. Emma made a split-second decision. The hospital was 8 blocks away. Too far to carry a grown man, but not too far to get help. She carefully positioned the unconscious man so he wouldn't fall, removed her only jacket despite the cold rain, and placed it over him. "I'll be right back with help," she promised, though she doubted he could hear her. "Please, just hold on." She ran like she'd never run before, her lungs burning and her soaked clothes weighing her down. By the time she burst through the emergency room doors, she was gasping for breath, her appearance so disheveled that the nurse at the reception desk initially thought she was the patient. "There's a man," Emma panted, pointing vaguely in the direction she'd come from. "Unconscious, on a bench, Jackson Street, head injury." The next hour passed in a blur. An ambulance was dispatched, the man was brought in, and Emma found herself answering questions from hospital staff and police officers. No, she didn't know him. No, she hadn't seen what happened. Yes, she was the one who found him. "You likely saved his life, miss," a doctor told her afterward. "He suffered a severe hypoglycemic attack complicated by a concussion. If he'd remained in that rain much longer in his condition." He left the sentence unfinished, but Emma understood. "Can I see him?" she asked, surprising herself with the request. The doctor hesitated. "He's stable but unconscious. Are you family?" "No, I want to make sure he's okay." Something in her expression must have moved the doctor because he nodded. 5 minutes, room 204. The man looked different lying in the hospital bed, hooked up to IVs and monitors. Without the rain and the darkness obscuring her view, Emma could see he was handsome, probably in his mid-30s with strong features and dark hair. An expensive watch still encircled his wrist. Apparently, whoever had injured him hadn't been after his valuables. Emma stood awkwardly at the foot of his bed, suddenly unsure why she'd insisted on seeing him. She'd done her part. She should leave now, find another sheltered spot for the night before all the good ones were taken. As she turned to go, a hoarse voice stopped her. "You." The man's eyes were open, deep brown and intensely focused on her face. "You're the one who found me," he stated, rather than asked, his voice gaining strength with each word. Emma nodded, oddly nervous. "How did you know?" A small smile crossed his lips. "Your jacket. They told me someone left their jacket with me, and then I saw it on the chair." He gestured to where her worn denim jacket hung, still damp. "I should go," Emma said quickly. "I'm glad you're okay." "Wait," he called as she reached for the door. "Your name, please." She hesitated, years of caution warring with something else, something that felt strangely like connection. "Emma," she finally answered. "Emma Hayes." "Emma Hayes," he repeated, as if committing it to memory. "I'm Daniel Thorne, and I owe you my life." She shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. Anyone would have done the same." "No," he said with certainty. "They wouldn't have, trust me on that." His eyes never left her face, studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "You're soaking wet and exhausted. Do you have somewhere to go tonight?" The question hit her like a physical blow. Emma stiffened, her pride rising defensively. "I'll be fine," she said curtly. Daniel Thorne's expression softened. "I apologize. That was presumptuous of me." He reached for the small table beside his bed, wincing slightly at the movement. "At least let me cover your taxi fare. It's the least I can do." "I don't need your money," Emma said, even as her stomach clenched with hunger and her body shivered from her wet clothes. "No, you don't need it," he agreed, surprising her. "But I need to give it. Please, Emma, allow me this small repayment." Before she could formulate another refusal, a nurse entered the room. "I'm sorry, but visiting hours are over, and Mr. Thorne needs his rest." Emma nodded, relieved at the interruption. "Goodbye, Mr. Thorne. Take care of yourself." As she slipped out the door, she heard his voice once more. "This isn't goodbye, Emma Hayes. I promise you that." Something about the way he said it, with absolute conviction, sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with her wet clothes. Little did she know that this chance encounter on a rainy night would change the course of her life forever. Emma spent the night in a 24-hour laundromat, huddled in a corner with her damp jacket draped over her shoulders. The fluorescent lights and constant hum of machines made sleep nearly impossible, but at least she was dry and relatively warm. Morning brought with it the usual challenges: finding a public restroom to freshen up, scrounging for enough change to buy a small coffee, and figuring out where she might find work for the day. She tried not to think about Daniel Thorne. Something about their brief interaction had unsettled her, though she couldn't pinpoint exactly why. Perhaps it was the intensity in his eyes, or the way he'd seemed to see through her carefully constructed facade of self-sufficiency. Whatever the reason, Emma was determined to put the entire incident behind her. She had more pressing concerns, like finding her next meal. By mid-morning, she'd managed to secure a few hours of work helping at a local farmer's market, earning $20 and a bag of slightly bruised apples. It wasn't much, but it was something. She was counting her money on a park bench, mentally calculating how to stretch it over the next few days, when a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. Emma paid it little attention until the back window rolled down and a familiar voice called her name. "Emma Hayes," Daniel Thorne said, as if her full name were a statement in itself. She froze, apple halfway to her mouth, disbelief written across her face. "How did you find me?" Daniel stepped out of the car, looking remarkably recovered for someone who'd been unconscious in a hospital bed just yesterday. His suit was immaculate, his posture confident, but there was a certain gentleness in his expression as he approached. "I hired someone," he admitted without apology. "I needed to thank you properly." Emma's disbelief turned to wariness. "You hired someone to track me down? That's disturbing." "Perhaps," he acknowledged, "but necessary. You saved my life, Emma, and then you disappeared." She stood up, gathering her meager belongings. "I didn't save your life for a reward, Mr. Thorne, and I didn't disappear. I just went back to my life." Something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, perhaps, or recognition. "Would you have coffee with me?" he asked, gesturing to a cafe across the street. "Just 10 minutes of your time. That's all I'm asking." Every instinct told Emma to refuse, to walk away from this man and his intense focus on her. But curiosity, and if she was honest with herself, hunger, won out. 10 minutes, she agreed reluctantly. The cafe was small but elegant, with rich aromas of coffee and freshly baked pastries that made Emma's mouth water. Daniel ordered for both of them, a full breakfast spread that had Emma raising her eyebrows. "I only agreed to coffee," she reminded him. Daniel smiled slightly. "Humor me. You look like you could use a decent meal." Pride warred with practicality in Emma's mind. I don't need charity, she said, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. It's not charity, it's gratitude, Daniel countered smoothly, and perhaps a bit of selfishness on my part. I find I'm curious about the woman who would help a stranger at considerable personal cost. The food arrived, and Emma's resolve weakened at the sight of scrambled eggs, bacon, and toast. Her stomach growled audibly, making further protests seem foolish. I saw you last night, Daniel said as she began to eat. Not at the hospital, but earlier, when I was still conscious. You were huddled under that awning, clearly struggling yourself, yet you still came to help me. Emma paused, fork mid-air. So you remember that? He nodded. Fragments. I have hypoglycemia, dangerously low blood sugar. Combined with a head injury from a mugging attempt, it was not a good situation. But I remember seeing you before I lost consciousness. Why were you on that bench in the first place? Emma asked, curiosity overcoming her reticence. You don't exactly look like someone who normally sits on park benches in the rain. A shadow crossed Daniel's face. I was not thinking clearly. I'd missed a meal, was walking rather than taking my car because I needed to clear my head after a difficult business meeting. When the muggers approached, I tried to hand over my wallet, but apparently I fumbled, a symptom of the hypoglycemia. They thought I was resisting and struck me. I managed to stagger to that bench before everything went black. Emma absorbed this information, assessing his story for inconsistencies, but finding none. I'm glad you're okay, she said finally, sincerely. Thanks to you. Daniel leaned forward, his expression earnest. Emma, I know this will sound abrupt, but I'd like to offer you a job. She blinked, caught completely off guard. Job? I own a company, Thorn Enterprises. We have an immediate opening for an administrative assistant. The pay is competitive, benefits are excellent, and it comes with temporary housing until you can find your own place. Emma's fork clattered to her plate. How did you... She began, then stopped, suddenly understanding. You had me investigated. That's why you hired someone. Not just to find me, but to find out about me. Daniel had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. Yes, I wanted to know more about the person who saved my life. So you know I'm homeless, Emma said flatly, humiliation burning through her. And you've decided to rescue me. Is that it? I know you're in a difficult situation through no fault of your own, he corrected gently. And I know from your employment history that you're hard-working and reliable. The job offer is legitimate, Emma. You're qualified for the position. She stared at him, trying to read his intentions. Why would you do this for a stranger? Because 11 years ago, I was in a similar position, he said quietly, surprising her again. Not homeless, but close to it. Someone took a chance on me when I needed it most. I've always wanted to pay that forward. Emma wanted to believe him. The prospect of a job, a real job with benefits, was almost too good to be true, but experience had taught her that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. I don't know anything about being an administrative assistant, she admitted. You'll learn. You're clearly adaptable and intelligent. And the housing? What strings are attached to that? His expression remained open, unfazed by her suspicion. No strings. It's a company apartment we keep for visiting executives. It's sitting empty right now and would be yours for 3 months, enough time to save for your own place. Emma's mind raced, weighing options that had suddenly expanded beyond simple survival. A job, an apartment. It was everything she'd been desperately trying to achieve these past months. I need time to think about it, she said finally. Daniel nodded, reaching into his jacket to withdraw a business card. Take all the time you need. My direct number is on there. The position is yours if you want it. As they left the cafe, Emma turned to him with one last question. What would you have done if I hadn't been qualified for any positions at your company? Daniel smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes, transforming his serious face. Then I would have created a position. But that's not necessary. You are qualified, Emma Hayes. You're exactly what my company needs. He returned to his car, leaving Emma standing on the sidewalk, business card in hand, facing a crossroads she never could have anticipated when she stepped out of the rain to help a stranger. 3 weeks into her new job at Thorn Enterprises, Emma still couldn't quite believe the turn her life had taken. Her position as administrative assistant to the executive team was challenging but rewarding. Her colleagues were respectful, and the temporary apartment, a sleek one-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, made her previous living situations seem like distant memories. Yet something didn't add up. Despite Daniel's claim that she would be working for his company, she rarely saw him. Their interactions were limited to brief hallway encounters and occasional meetings where he nodded politely, but maintained a professional distance. It was as if their intense conversations had never happened, leaving Emma to wonder if she'd imagined the connection between them. "He's always like that," explained Natalie, the marketing director who had taken Emma under her wing. They were sharing lunch in the staff cafeteria, a space that resembled an upscale restaurant more than a workplace dining area. "Daniel Thorne is brilliant, but reserved. Everyone respects him, but few really know him. I just thought—" Emma trailed off, unsure how to articulate her confusion without revealing the unusual circumstances of her employment. Natalie smiled knowingly. "You thought what? That the reclusive CEO would personally mentor you? Half the women in this building have crushes on him, but he keeps to himself, always has." "It's not like that," Emma protested, feeling her cheeks warm. "I'm just grateful for the opportunity." "As you should be. Thorne Enterprises receives hundreds of applications for every opening. Getting hired here without connections or an Ivy League degree is practically unheard of." The comment, though not malicious, stung Emma with its implications. Did everyone assume she had connections? Or worse, did they suspect the truth, that she'd been plucked from homelessness by the CEO's inexplicable generosity? That evening, working late to prove her worth, Emma discovered something unexpected. She'd been tasked with organizing the company's charitable giving records when she noticed a pattern. Over the past decade, Thorne Enterprises had quietly funded dozens of housing and education initiatives for at-risk youth and homeless adults. None of these donations had been publicized. In fact, they seemed deliberately kept from public knowledge. Even more surprising was a small foundation named Hayes Initiative that received substantial annual funding. The similarity to her own surname could hardly be coincidental. "Finding anything interesting?" Emma startled at Daniel's voice. He stood in the doorway of the small conference room she'd commandeered, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, the first time she'd seen him looking anything less than impeccably formal. "I was just organizing the charitable giving files," she explained, instinctively minimizing the screen showing the Hayes Initiative. "You're very generous." Something flickered across his face. Wariness, perhaps. "The company does well. It's important to give back. Especially to causes that help the homeless," Emma ventured, watching his reaction carefully. Daniel entered the room fully now, closing the door behind him. "You found the Hayes Initiative," he stated rather than asked. Emma nodded, curiosity overcoming her professional reserve. "Is it named after me? But that doesn't make sense. The foundation has existed for years." For a long moment Daniel was silent, seemingly debating how much to reveal. Finally he sighed, taking a seat across from her. "It's named after another Emma Hayes," he admitted. "My mother." "Your mother?" Emma repeated, confused. "But your last name is Thorne." "My stepfather's name. When he married my mother, I was 8 years old. He adopted me, changed my name from Daniel Hayes to Daniel Thorne." His fingers traced an invisible pattern on the conference table. "My mother died when I was 15. Breast cancer." "I'm sorry," Emma said softly, recognizing the lingering pain in his voice even decades later. "Before she got sick, we were happy. Middle class, comfortable. After she died, everything fell apart. My stepfather started drinking, lost his job, and eventually abandoned me. I was 17, suddenly homeless, with nothing but my mother's memory and her name." Understanding dawned on Emma. "That's why you helped me. Not just because I saved you, but because of my name. When I heard your full name in that hospital room, it felt—" Daniel paused, searching for the right word. "Significant. Like my mother was reaching across time, reminding me of promises I'd made." "What promises?" Emma asked, drawn into his story despite herself. "When I clawed my way out of poverty, built this company from nothing, I promised I'd never forget where I came from. The Hayes Initiative was my way of honoring that promise. And her memory." His gaze, usually guarded, was now open and vulnerable. "Then you appeared, an Emma Hayes who needed help, just as I once did. How could I not see that as meaningful?" The revelation stunned Emma. All this time she'd wondered about his motivations, even suspected ulterior motives, when the truth was both simpler and more profound than she'd imagined. "So that's why you offered me the job," she said slowly. "Because of your mother." Daniel shook his head. "That's why I noticed you, but the job offer was based on merit. I researched your work history, your references from before. Everything happened with your family. You earned this position, Emma. The name just made me look twice. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He checked it briefly, his expression shifting back to the composed CEO she was accustomed to seeing. I have to take this, but I'm glad you know the truth now. As he rose to leave, Emma found herself asking, "Why did you stay away? These past weeks you've barely acknowledged me." Daniel paused at the door. "Because I didn't want anyone, especially you, to think your position here was about anything other than your abilities. Office gossip can be cruel." The answer made sense, yet Emma felt there was more he wasn't saying. Something in his expression, quickly masked, suggested other reasons for his distance, reasons perhaps he himself wasn't ready to acknowledge. After he left, Emma returned to the files with new understanding. Each donation, each initiative now reflected not just corporate philanthropy, but a personal mission born of hardship and remembrance. She found herself moved by the depth of commitment hidden beneath Daniel's reserved exterior. The next morning, Emma arrived at work to find an envelope on her desk. Inside was a handwritten note. "My mother would have liked you. Dinner tonight? No strings, just conversation. DT." Emma hesitated, her pencil hovering over the daily planner where she recorded her schedule. Accepting felt like crossing a boundary, moving their relationship beyond the professional realm into something undefined and potentially complicated. Yet refusing seemed impossible after the connection they'd shared yesterday. She was still deliberating when her computer chimed with an urgent email. Opening it, she froze, her blood turning to ice in her veins. The message was from her stepfather, somehow having discovered where she worked. "We need to talk. Your mother is in trouble. $50,000, or she goes to jail. I know you have access to money now." The familiar manipulation, the barely veiled threat, transported Emma back to the night her family had betrayed her. But she wasn't that vulnerable girl anymore. In just 3 weeks, she'd regained not only financial stability, but something more precious: self-respect. With sudden clarity, Emma made 2 decisions. She would deal with her stepfather's demands, not from fear, but from strength. And she would accept Daniel's dinner invitation, not because she owed him or needed him, but because she wanted to know more about the man whose past so strangely mirrored her own. What she couldn't know was how these 2 decisions would collide, forcing both her and Daniel to confront painful truths neither was fully prepared to face. Emma arrived at the upscale restaurant 15 minutes early, her mind still reeling from her stepfather's message. She'd spent the afternoon crafting a careful response, neither agreeing to his demands nor closing the door completely. "I need proof of Mum's situation. No money without verification." It was a delaying tactic, but it gave her time to think. The maitre d' led her to a private corner table where Daniel was already waiting. He stood when she approached, his usual corporate armor replaced by casual elegance, dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that softened his normally imposing presence. "You look troubled," he said after they were seated, bypassing small talk entirely. Emma hesitated, surprised by his perceptiveness. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's learned to read people's concerns," he replied. "Business necessity. You don't have to share if you'd prefer not to." She traced the rim of her water glass, weighing her options. "My stepfather contacted me today. He's attempting to extort money." Daniel's expression darkened. "For what?" "He claims my mother is in legal trouble and needs $50,000. Emma shook her head. "It's the same pattern as before. Create a crisis, demand I fix it. Except this time, they think I have access to real money." "Because you work for me," Daniel concluded quietly. "Yes. Somehow he found out where I work. He's always been good at tracking down potential sources of cash." She attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm handling it. I just wanted you to know in case there's any unpleasantness." Daniel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "What are you planning to do?" "I've asked for verification of my mother's situation. I don't expect to get it. There probably is no legal trouble, just another gambling debt or scheme gone wrong." Emma straightened her shoulders. "I won't give them money, but I might see them, try to end this cycle for good." They paused as the waiter arrived with wine and took their dinner orders. When they were alone again, Daniel leaned forward. "Family is complicated," he said. "When my stepfather abandoned me, part of me still wanted his approval, even after everything he'd done." "Did you ever reconcile with him?" Emma asked. "No. He died 5 years ago, liver failure. I paid for the funeral, but I didn't attend." Something vulnerable flickered across his face. "I've always wondered if that makes me a terrible person." "It doesn't," Emma said firmly. "Some betrayals can't be forgiven, even if we want to." Daniel studied her thoughtfully. "Yet you're considering meeting with your family despite how they treated you." "Not to forgive them," Emma clarified. "To free myself. As long as I'm running or hiding, they still have power over me." Their conversation shifted to lighter topics through dinner, books they'd both read, places they hoped to visit someday, the unexpected paths that had led them to their current careers. Emma found herself laughing for what felt like the first time in months, drawn to the intelligence and quiet humor beneath Daniel's reserved exterior. As they shared dessert, a decadent chocolate creation neither could resist, Daniel asked, "Would you like company when you meet your family? You shouldn't have to face them alone." Emma's fork paused midway to her mouth. "That's very kind, but I couldn't ask that of you." "You didn't ask. I offered." His expression was earnest. "Sometimes having someone in your corner changes everything." Before she could respond, Daniel's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He glanced at it, then froze, his face suddenly unreadable. "Is something wrong?" Emma asked. He hesitated before turning the phone toward her. On the screen was a message from an unknown number. "Back off, Thorne. Emma is family business. $100,000 or the story of how you're sleeping with a homeless girl goes public. Your choice." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. "That's my stepfather. How did he get your number? More importantly, how does he know we're together tonight?" Daniel's voice was calm, but his eyes scanned the restaurant warily. Following his gaze, Emma spotted a familiar figure at the bar, her stepfather's longtime friend, pretending to study a menu while watching their table. "We're being observed," she whispered, nodding discreetly in that direction. Daniel's expression hardened. "Let's go. My car is waiting outside." In the safety of his vehicle, Emma's composure finally cracked. "I'm so sorry," she said, hands trembling. "I never thought they'd target you. I should have known they wouldn't stop at manipulating just me." "This isn't your fault," Daniel assured her, his voice gentle but firm. "Your stepfather saw an opportunity and took it. That's what manipulators do. But now, your reputation is at risk. The company is fine," he interrupted. "I've faced worse threats." "What concerns me is you." Emma stared out the window at the passing cityscape, her thoughts racing. "I need to end this once and for all." "We," Daniel corrected. "We need to end this." The next morning, Emma's stepfather and mother arrived at a small coffee shop, their expressions shifting from smug anticipation to confusion when they saw not just Emma, but Daniel waiting for them. Emma barely recognized her mother. Just 6 months had aged her dramatically, her once carefully maintained appearance now haggard and worn. "What's this?" her stepfather demanded. "We said come alone." "You're not in a position to make demands," Daniel replied coolly. Emma's mother avoided her gaze. "We just need help, Emma. That's all we've ever needed from you." "No," Emma said quietly, finding strength in Daniel's steady presence beside her. "What you've needed is someone to manipulate and exploit. That ends today." Daniel placed a folder on the table. "Inside is documentation of your gambling debts, the loans you've taken from known criminal elements, and your history of tax evasion," he told her stepfather. "Also included is evidence of your attempt to extort money from me and Emma." The color drained from her stepfather's face. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Daniel's expression remained impassive. "Test me and find out. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave this cafe, leave this city, and most importantly, leave Emma alone. Forever." "Or what?" her stepfather challenged, though his voice lacked conviction. "Or I'll ensure every creditor you've been dodging knows exactly where to find you, and the police will receive an interesting file about your recent blackmail attempt." Emma's mother finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. "We just wanted what was best for the family." "No, Mom," Emma said gently. "You wanted what was easiest. There's a difference." She reached across the table, not to take her mother's hand, but to place a business card between them. "This is a counselor who specializes in families affected by gambling addiction. When you're ready to actually change, call them." Her mother stared at the card as if it were a foreign object, while her stepfather's face contorted with anger, then resignation. Without another word, they left, the bell above the cafe door signaling what Emma hoped was their final exit from her life. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked quietly, once they were alone. Emma exhaled shakily. "No, but I will be." She looked at him with wonder. "How did you get all that information so quickly?" A small smile played at his lips. "I didn't. The folder contains blank papers, but people with guilty consciences fill in the blanks themselves." Despite everything, Emma laughed. A genuine sound of relief and newfound freedom. "That's either brilliant or terrifying." "A bit of both," Daniel admitted, reaching for her hand across the table. "Emma Hayes, you are one of the strongest people I've ever met." 6 months later, Emma stood in her own apartment, smaller than the company suite but truly hers, paid for with her savings from her now permanent position at Thorne Enterprises. On her bookshelf stood a framed photograph of another Emma Hayes, Daniel's mother, whose name had created an unexpected bridge between two wounded souls. Her relationship with Daniel had evolved gradually, both of them careful to ensure that work and personal boundaries remained clear. But tonight, as they prepared dinner together in her kitchen, Emma recognized the truth that had been building since that rainy night when she'd found a stranger on a bench. Sometimes the family we choose heals the wounds left by the family we're born into. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Emma smiled, reaching for his hand. "That invisible gift sometimes come in the strangest packages. And that saving you that night might actually have saved me too." Daniel pulled her close, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "We saved each other," he corrected softly, "and that's the most precious gift of all."